And welcome to the July 2021 edition of City Connection. City Connection is the live television program with our elected city officials, usually Mayor Rosalind Bliss. Today, a special surprise. It's where we offer the community the opportunity to hear about efforts from City Hall and beyond. With Community Media Center, I'm your host, Linda Galash. And today, rather than being joined by Mayor Rosalind Bliss, we have in the studio here First Ward Commissioner John O'Connor. And also later in City Connection, we provide time for your questions and comments, and in that second half of the program. Take part in the conversation. You can do that by sending your questions and comments to cityconnection@grcmc.org. You can do it through Twitter at GRTV Access or by commenting at GRTV's Facebook page. City Connection is a collaboration with Community Media Center and the City of Grand Rapids. Again, broadcasting live today, July 12th, 2021. You're at Community Access Television Channel 24 and live streaming at therapidian.org and GRTV's Facebook page. We'll be rebroadcasting this program throughout the month. We'll do that on GRTV's Channel 25. And now in studio with me, we welcome to the studio Grand Rapids First Ward Commissioner John O'Connor. John, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for standing in, and it's always good to hear a little bit more in depth about a particular ward. You represent this ward, the first ward of Grand Rapids. Tell us a little bit about you.
So I'm privileged to serve as the First Ward City Commissioner here in my second term. I've been a West Sider for closing in on 20 years now, and had the opportunity to serve as a school board member for a term before I was elected to be a city commissioner. I'm also a small business owner here in the First Ward as well.
Well, you have some deep roots, as you mentioned, about 20 years here now, but as we were talking earlier, you were an intern at West Grand Neighborhood Organization, so talk about that experience.
Yeah, when I was a public administration major in college, and I had an assignment from Professor Rich Delir, who was a dear friend, asked us to explore a neighborhood and learn more about it. And so I lived on the west side at the time while I was going to Grand Valley, and got to meet Nola over at West Grand, who just engendered so much her love of the west side, which got me excited about the west side. Also got to spend some time with Father Denny Morrow, our west side historian, who just gave me so much history about the west side. And so it really made me fall in love with the place and the people and the neighborhood. And that's, I had the luck of being able to call it home since I graduated from college.
This side of town, just like each of the wards, though, has its unique history. This one often kind of considered an immigrant side of town with different immigrant populations throughout the years, but I'd love to hear a little bit about your education experience when it came to learning about the First Ward area and the west side.
Yeah, I think that's the entirety of the First Ward. The First Ward is certainly much bigger than the west side. We are everything west of the river, but we're also the entire Granville Avenue corridor, all of South Division, all the way down to parts of Garfield Park and Elger Heights. And so it's the First Ward is a very diverse ward, which I think is still home. It's still a place that a lot of immigrants population comes to call home. And so I feel like our west side is a very welcoming place to people to come. If you're moving to Grand Rapids, it's a place that you can find a place for you almost anywhere in the west side that it'll feel like home.
You can almost look at Catholic churches and kind of trace the history of different populations, but I would love to just hear a little bit more about some of the history here, because I'm not a native of this side of town.
No, the First Ward was home to lots of the furniture factories, and so I think that's why it had such a diverse immigrant population, as people came here to find work. And so we have, obviously a large Polish population, Lithuanian, Irish, German, and now today we have a very large Hispanic population that's come to call the First Ward home. And so I think it is still a place where it was there's a lot of attainable housing here in the First Ward, which enabled people to come and set roots and be able to find home ownership and ultimately find a place that they fit into a community.
Do you feel that's still the case, that this is an affordable housing part of our community?
Absolutely. We have such a diverse housing stock in the First Ward and across the west side, and we've Grand Rapids continues to expand. Housing is certainly a topic that's on everyone's mind, but I think we're one of the leading places in the city to have housing be developed, whether it's low-income housing tax credit projects, which support folks to be able to get housing at affordable prices, to new development projects, condos, all kinds of a variety of housing types as well.
Well, there's a lot of change happening on the west side, and most recently, this Bridge Street corridor changed quite a bit in the last few years, but also part of the First Ward is up towards Leonard, and we were talking a little bit about, you're a business owner on that street, but there's a lot of new things happening over that direction.
Yeah, I think we're really fortunate here in West Michigan to have a variety of housing developers who are able to develop various types of housing projects, whether they are low-income housing tax credit projects, which takes its own type of skill to be able to develop, to folks trying to figure out how we fill in that missing middle, where we're trying to do the 80 to 120% AMI housing to market rate housing, and we're seeing a variety of those housing projects developed all over the First Ward. We're just around the corner from Stocking. We've had two big successful projects on Stocking. There's another one coming down the pipeline. Over on Leonard, we've got we just had the dwelling place did a scattered site stuff with some stuff on Pine Street and some stuff on Alpine, and now there's a new project on the old funeral home on Leonard. It's going to be a housing project for seniors. We have an affordable housing project that's up on the corner of Leonard and Alpine. There's the old Chaser Zone, it's the old fireproof warehouse building. I think that's what people mostly know it as. That's a big project for Bazzani that's going to have some market rate apartments in it. So it's really great to see that people are interested in investing in the West Side and also helping to address the need of just a variety of housing that we need in our community. We need housing at every price point and of every variety, and so it's really glad to see that people are willing and wanting to invest in the West Side. Oh, and the old YMCA building, that's going to be another big housing project for that entire block. And so that building's been vacant for a couple of years now, and it's a very significant stretch on the south side of Leonard Street there that it's been kind of an eyesore for a few years, and so I'm really excited they're gonna demo that entire building and put up a significant number, a couple hundred units of housing there.
Okay, well, it sounds like a lot of mixed-use spaces, and talk about, that's been sort of a desire of the city to have that sort of thing where there's some business, some residential, all together in the same area.
Yeah, I think we've learned from the mistakes of the past that both mixed income and mixed use are both good for a neighborhood. Just putting a whole bunch of housing in a location is great, but you need to have amenities associated with that, whether those are dining amenities or retail amenities. And so, having that street front activity on the main floor of projects is really important. It helps keep the vibrancy of the neighborhood. It helps create a feeling of safety. But then having the residential as a component of those projects really makes for something that it functions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Then.
Tell a little bit about what you would say are some needs still for the First Ward. There's a lot of progress been made. What's maybe next as an important thing that's needed on the First Ward areas?
I still think I think housing is still the number one priority, even as in adopting our most recent budget. We're still making significant investments in housing, trying to find housing at all price points, affordable housing. Absolutely. I think home ownership opportunities are still something that is needed. We've invested in a lot and seen a lot of investment in rental properties, rental units, apartment buildings, but trying to find, we are a land constrained community. Grand Rapids isn't getting any bigger in terms of land area, so it's figuring out how we can fit in units that can be purchased as well. And when we talk about housing units, it's not necessarily just what we think of as a traditional detached single-family home. We've done some changes to our zoning code to try to help facilitate some more townhouse type development where you kind of have a shared common wall, but not necessarily a freestanding unit. And also trying to figure out how we've kind of lost some of the condo development we saw in past building cycles just due to some kind of financing stuff that happened in the national financial scene. So it's trying to figure out how at some point we'll probably see some of these apartment buildings get converted to condos, which can create ownership opportunities. But we're really hopeful that we can find ways for people to have your house is your single biggest asset. And it's also the easiest way for people to accumulate wealth. And so wanting to figure out ways we can find can get people access to be able to own something is important.
Okay. Any projects coming up that maybe aren't known yet? You can tip your hand a little bit and tell us what to look forward to.
No, I don't think I have any surprises in my belt at this point for housing projects at all, or even I think I talked about all the ones that I know that are kind of at the precipice of happening soon. So.
When you mentioned the size of the first ward and the diversity of all the areas that it covers, how many acres? How do you compare it physically to the other two wards?
Well, we are, roughly 1/3 of the city. We haven't got the final census numbers, but we assume Grand Rapids will be over 200,000 people for the first time. So roughly 66,000 people. We don't change the boundaries of the wards unless population swings at least 10%. There's a 10% difference between the wards. So, not sure if that's going to happen. I don't think it will. But we're about 1/3 of the land area of the city and about 1/3 of the population of the city.
Okay. Well, a thing that's come about because of pandemic situations where some of these social zones, 3 or so of them are in this side of town or in the ward. But do you think this is something that's here to stay? Tell a little bit about the experience that has it been a positive thing?
Yeah, I think early in the pandemic, I'm really proud of the city reacting the way they did to realize that in order for businesses, especially hospitality businesses, to remain in our community, and they're such a vibrant part of our community from our breweries and our farm to table restaurants, and they're an important component of what makes Grand Rapids an exciting place to live and visit. And so we needed to figure out ways for them to be able to gain revenue when they couldn't have indoor dining, and so the city very quickly shifted to creating new and interesting ways to allow people to have outdoor seating, both on premise of restaurants as well as these social zones, which took some change in legislation, but now allows for a district to be created where you could purchase a beverage from a participating business and enjoy it in the social zone. So our DDA got on that early, and there's one downtown on Monroe, and there was one here on Bridge Street to the east side of Bridge Street, and now recently we passed 3 more social zones on the west side. So there's one on Fulton Street, an additional one on Bridge Street, and one on Leonard Street. And I'm hopeful that they're here to stay. I think people have really. It's been interesting to watch as Michigan being a 4-season state. We didn't spend a lot of time outside dining in the fall or winter most of the time, but I think the pandemic has shifted habits of people, and we're Michiganders. We have some. We're
so
tough.
Hardy.
Yeah, we can be outside when it's 50 degrees, and it's not that bad. So I think there's now consumer demand for people to want to be outside more than they have in the past, and so I hope that we get to continue having these both expanded outdoor dining options on premise for places as well as these social zones. I think they're good, and they add vibrancy.
Well, it does feel like the personality of the city is changing just a bit, and it is a vibrancy. Even if you're in a snowsuit or in an igloo outside, if it's here to stay, is this something that you have to do some different rules changes, any different legislation, or do you think you just kind of continue what's in place, or was it temporary?
Our legislative team and the folks at the DDA are working on Lansing, on some stuff in Lansing to ensure that the social zones can continue in perpetuity, and so I think there's support from other communities to help us make sure that language gets across the finish line, and we can have these things, have the opportunity to have these moving forward without question.
Okay. Well, there's city has been talking about, and it has issued some grants with maybe some of that COVID relief money that does assist businesses in particular neighborhood focuses, and I didn't know if any of that touched in the first ward at all.
Yeah, we have several neighborhoods of focus here in the first ward. So early in the pandemic, the city offered $5,000 grants for businesses to help deal with the effects of COVID, and we just announced today actually that there's an additional pot of money available for up to $10,000 grants for businesses to continue, small businesses in neighborhoods of focus, to be able to have dollars to help them continue to make changes necessary to navigate through the pandemic here. And so those are for neighborhoods of focus. So neighborhoods of focus are neighborhoods who are traditionally underserved in terms of their economic development, and so there are several here in the first ward. In the Lower West Side here along Granville Avenue, and some of the South Division areas are all in the neighborhoods of focus, and so businesses in those communities can reach out to the Economic Development Department and determine their eligibility and see how to access some of those funds to help them.
So the city's Economic Development Department, that's the way to get information on how to apply for those as a
Yep.
business. Okay. Well, we're coming up on 15 after the hour. I'm going to take a quick break. We'll be back shortly after this break. It's City Connection here on Community Media Center's GRTV Livewire, Channel 24. Ready, Stephanie?
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push their creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
Back to City Connection. I'm Linda Galash and joined in studio by First Ward Commissioner John O'Connor. And we've been talking a little bit about things here in the First Ward in particular. And John, you are part of the West Side Corridor Improvement Authority. So I wanted to hear a little bit about some of the activities that that authority is doing.
Yeah, so the Corridor Improvement District is kind of functions similar to a DDA. So we do some tax capture for properties that are invested in here on the west side, and that allows us to go do a bunch of stuff to help make the west side a better place. You drive around and you see the banners on all the telephone poles right now, announcing this is the west side. Each street's got its own color. So that was a project that the West Side SID has done in the past, and we got a variety of different projects we continue to work on. We have a really great facade improvement grant program that's been a good success so far, where small businesses here in the west side can get access to dollars. It's a matching dollar. So if you commit to spending money to make the exterior of your business better, that will match some of those dollars to help you either get the project over the finish line or help make the project go around.
Some of those projects have already happened?
Yeah, we just did one for the Bridge Street House of Prayer, who bought the old liquor store on Bridge Street near Tacos El Cuñado.
Okay.
And so that was a significant rehab they did on that business, around that nonprofit / they have a small coffee shop there now, but took what was a pretty tired old building and put a beautiful facade on the outside with some some great awnings and some glass.
Very close to the hill, going up the hill there?
Yeah, it was right
By
before.
Lane?
That was right before you get to Lincoln Park.
Got it, okay.
And so it's a beautiful building there. There's a whole gentleman who's got a variety of buildings on the 400 block of Leonard. We just supported his project. A bunch of storefronts there that, again, all had some pretty tired old facades on it, and so he's come in and committed to renovating, I think, a total of 5 different buildings there. And so he's spent a ton of money, not only fixing up the outside of the buildings, but there were a ton of apartments in the upper levels of those buildings that weren't even occupied; they were just vacant. So, in addressing some of the housing concern, he got, I think, 16 of the 18 units back online, which is great to add some housing supply, but also to make what was a pretty tired section of Leonard Street look really nice again. And so those funds are available to other folks who are looking to make the exteriors of their buildings more attractive and appealing.
And where do you go to get information on that? Should be a business owner that wants to update the facade or do some improvement.
You can
like
also
that.
reach out to the Economic Development Department at the city, and they can point you in the right direction there. There's a grant application right there online.
Okay, so some new gateway signage as well?
Yeah, it's a project we've had on the radar for a couple of years now. Is again, placemaking is a big deal. Wanting to welcome people into the neighborhood. One of the challenges we always say with the West Side is you have to cross the river and go under a highway to get here, and so kind of announcing that you're here. So one project we've been working on is some over the street signage that will welcome you to the West Side. So we're hopeful to put one of those at Leonard, one at Fulton, and one at Bridge, kind of welcoming you to the West Side and really signifying that you've made it to the place.
All right, and some art.
Yeah, we partnered with last year during the pandemic. We partnered with Hannah over at Lions and Rabbits and her team, and a bunch of she's done a bunch of great projects, kind of these night out projects, and so we had some murals that went up all over the West Side featuring and supporting local artists. And so right now we're in process of doing a West Side survey to look at various places that art can exist, and then hopefully we're going to find a path to again hire local artists to come in and beautify spaces and create some vibrancy with very large public art pieces.
There are some art displays already on the West Side. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those where you can go to see one? I'm thinking of just off the highway, just below 131 is one section.
Yeah, the one right there that was Richard, right off Leonard, right by the Speedway there, that was a public art. We're actually going to redo that one. There's been some challenges. That's one thing Hannah's working on.
Pretty tall brick building there that you can see from the highway.
Yeah, but unfortunately that was a very community supported art piece that went in, but the brick had some problems with it. So we're actually going to be redoing that piece there, and hope to find had to work with the neighboring businesses to be able to allow us access to that. But I think there's going to be a path to hopefully get that mural redone and have it be another community supported mural that brings some beauty to the neighborhood.
Yeah. So when there's something such as a quarter improvement authority, how does that work with the neighborhood associations, the business associations here, particularly here on the West Side? There's a few different business districts here.
Yeah, so we have the Fulton Street Business District, the Stockbridge Business Association, and West Leonard. So the Corridor Improvement Authority has representatives from each of the various business districts. Overarching, the SID goes across the entirety of the West Side on all of those streets. Fulton, Bridge, Leonard, Stocking, and Seward.
So how do you take input from the different groups then? How does that all kind of mesh together?
There's representatives from each group that are members of the SID board, and that board makes decisions about how to spend the money. We have every year we adopt a budget that's got some focus on different projects that we want to see accomplished, and we've been we also did some grant dollars during COVID for various businesses to help them buy outdoor furniture and activate their outdoor spaces. So that was another big push we had. Was from the Polish Falcons to other knit brewing company, other folks that needed and wanted to have outdoor seating. The SID stepped up to provide funding for those businesses so that they could have outdoor seating in the time of need.
Okay, so lots of community support through a number of different avenues lately. Want to ask you a little bit of some of the struggles in neighborhoods recently, and even here on Bridge Street. There's a huge uptick in gun violence. It's not just here, but talk a little bit about what the city is doing to address this. First, give us kind of the layout of the situation as you see it right now.
Yeah, well, I think we last year, 2020, was the worst year for gun violence and murders in the city since the 80s. We've taken our police department and the city as a whole has taken a very strong stance that that we certainly don't want that in our community or in our city. The number of homicides is down this year, which is great, but the number of gun crimes still remains high. It's not unique to Grand Rapids; it's across the country, but it's it's certainly something that we're trying to navigate and to deal with. We with our new police chief, Chief Payne, we've the police department came out with their strategic plan just about 2 years ago now, which recommended some changes to the way that the policing is delivered. We're now on a neighborhood policing model, which tries to shift the focus of officers being more out on the street, being seen, being kind of visible to the public, and we're hoping to leverage some of those efforts to address some of these concerns. It's difficult right now, and I know nobody wants to have gun violence in their community, and we're trying the best we can to figure out how to solve these problems.
Community policing is a little bit of a move back towards the way things were before. Is it in place now? Would I expect to see maybe a community officer in this neighborhood right now?
Yeah, so we don't have, we used to have specific community officers assigned to neighborhoods. The shift now is that, there'll be a variety of officers that are your neighborhood officers. So rather than have them spread out throughout the service area, they have a more neighborhood focus, trying to get them more familiar and visible to specific areas in which they're assigned. We are still don't have enough officers to be able to implement the plan with full fidelity at this point. We're still a number of officers short in terms of full staffing for that. So that's we don't have every beat covered at this point, which is we're just tomorrow at commission we're going to approve some funds for another class of recruits. It's one of the things we've shifted now is we used to only hire sworn police officers. Now we, as a way to help, kind of grow our own and diversify our police force, we are hiring unsworn police officers and then paying for them to go to the academy and train to become certified and then join our ranks after certification. So that's it's kind of a long game for us that we want to diversify our force to try to match the demographics of our community to ensure that. We just think that that's a better approach, and we're still hiring sworn officers along the way. Our retirements are certainly outpacing our recruiting right now, but it's not a Grand Rapids problem. It's a problem across the country.
So with a budget just enacted and passed and implemented with July 1, was this this new hiring effort? Is this outside of the budget? Is this part of the plan?
This is part of the plan. This is and we did not increase funding for the police department this was as our city manager said, it was a continuation budget, kind of understanding the uncertainties of COVID and us being an income tax based city. We're not we just wanted to maintain status quo for now until we kind of see where the chips fall with things.
What do you, I'm not saying that you have the big secret here, but what do you see as the issue that is with this uptick of gun violence? And there's even some other kind of destructive neighborhood activity going on. What do you see behind this?
The last year's been challenging for everyone. I think there's still it's lack of opportunity. There's just a number of factors at play, and I really don't know all the answers to that. It's alarming to say the least that it's happening, and I think no matter where you live, we all want to live in a safe place, in a welcoming community, and gun violence is impacting everywhere. There's not one particular neighborhood that it's in. It's throughout our city, unfortunately.
Some of the other things going on is some motorcycle activity, and tell us a little bit about what that's looked like.
Yeah, we've had a big uptick in these. They're called Groms. They're these kind of they're bigger than a mini bike, but not quite as big as a motorcycle, and they are everywhere. There's hundreds of them will come out on certain nights of the week, and they will ride on sidewalks, disobey traffic laws. There's just too many of them to stop. Most of them don't have plates on them. They riders are wearing helmets, so you can't see their face. And I get a lot of calls about it. It's very disruptive to business districts. It's very disruptive to neighborhoods. It's disruptive to residents downtown. I've gotten a significant amount of calls about it. I've did a couple of town halls about it just last week, and it's not unique to Grand Rapids. It's happening in a number of cities around the country. But it's very hard to control. Again, given the uptick in other violent activities, it's hard to prioritize that as on how to solve it, and it's also difficult to we haven't in an effort to keep everyone safe, we have a no chase policy, and we're not going to chase you unless there's an imminent danger to the community, because we don't want anyone getting hurt because they got chased. So. We have our special operations department is working on trying to find solutions to deal with this. We've reached out to the leadership of those organizations and are trying to say there's some Facebook groups of these guys that organize these rides, and I'm trying to figure out ways in which we can stop them from. We're not going to stop them all, but if there's solutions to get some of them a place for them to do some riding in a productive way, maybe we can do that.
Okay, so definitely a disruption you mentioned. Any injuries or damage result from this so far?
Nothing significant. There's just a lot of annoyance. They'll ride on the Blue Bridge downtown, and they'll just take over, and there'll be somebody taking a photo of 100 people on these little mini motorcycles on the bridge, and it's just we don't want anyone to get hurt, and we're also afraid with the they'll pull up to a stoplight and surround a vehicle. I just don't want there to be an incident that happens where somebody gets mad and does a driver of a car gets mad at a motorcycle and then something negative happens either. Or someone falling off a motorcycle and getting hit, or running a stop sign and getting hit. We just don't want any of that injuries to happen as a result of people not following the rules.
Okay, so a summer challenge for sure. We're going to take another break here. We're at 4:32 on this Tuesday afternoon, and we'll be right back with City Connection after this break.
FM WYCE, a proud member of the Grand Rapids Community Media Center, has been serving the Grand Rapids community and beyond for over 30 years, offering a world of music through commercial-free, independent radio. Head on over to wyce.org today, where you can stream our broadcast 24/7, check out exclusive artist interviews, or make a donation. From everyone at 88.1 FM WYCE, thank you for your support.
The Wealthy Theater is Grand Rapids' local movie theater and performance center. Since 1998, it has been a host to nationally touring music groups, local theater performances, and a variety of community events. Today, the Wealthy Theater is not only a landmark community treasure with historic significance, but a pioneer in the infusion of technology and traditional theater. Underneath the elegance and classic sensibility that defines Wealthy Theater, there is a matrix of new technologies. The theater is completely digital and outfitted with cameras and microphones for concerts, theater and comedy troupes, speakers and lecturers, and so much more. Experience all that Wealthy Theater has to offer. And bring a friend. Be surprised by the Wealthy Theater.
Welcome back to City Connection. I'm in studio with First Ward Commissioner John O'Connor. We were talking a little bit about public safety concerns, and I should mention you're on the Public Safety Committee for the city. We talked a bit about some of the gun violence, and I wanted to follow up on that aspect with the Cure Violence effort that the city has been talking about. It's a particular program looking for the right partner to help with some of these issues here in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, I'm really excited that we found the Cure Violence program. It's a nationally recognized program with the violence interrupters. So folks that go into the community and help try to address gun violence at the stem by having folks who may have experience in the justice system, having been incarcerated, who kind of got their life back on track, and they're reaching out to folks who are committing gun crimes or violent crimes, and trying to get them to find a better way. And so it's been something the community's asked for a long time, and we have made a commitment to be a partner in that. And so I'm excited. Tomorrow at the city, actually, we're going to announce $125,000 fund the city's going to be a contribution that the city's going to be making to support Cure Violence. We've also got some philanthropic support, $300,000 from our partners at Spectrum Health, and we're going to announce that the fiduciary organization will be the Urban League to support Cure Violence. And so I'm really excited that the program's going to get up and off the ground. We will have 8 employees that will work through that program at the Urban League to hopefully have a significant impact on preventing violent crime in our community.
I wasn't aware of the element that had to do with returning citizens. Talk a little bit about that focus.
Well, I think that in learning about the program, it's not necessarily returning citizens. It's just people who have connection and
Okay.
to having done things in the past, who have real neighborhood connections and can speak first person about how it impacted their life, and to try to get people back on the right path, to not making poor decisions that will lead them down the same road and potentially either cause harm or get them incarcerated or put away.
Okay. As a member of the Public Safety Committee, I'm going to mention the fact that we've just made it through a holiday that allows fireworks, and some of that's still continuing. What is happening there? What do you see?
Oh, fireworks! I don't know what the state was thinking. It's one of the things I get the most calls about, especially this time of year. It can be overwhelming here in Grand Rapids by the private people lighting off fireworks in our community. People ask all the time, well, why can't the city stop it? And unfortunately, we at the city have adopted the most strict fireworks ordinance we can adopt according to the state law. It's I think it's 12 days a year you can light fireworks off. It's the day before, the day of, and the day after certain holidays, with a couple of weird exemptions in there. And I wish there was a way that we could ban fireworks further than that, just because it is so it's disarming to our veterans who have PTSD. It's disarming to pets. It makes it difficult to even function sometimes in the neighborhood with the amount of fireworks that are going off. And so we just ask people to respect those rules. We understand that 4th of July is a time to celebrate and light fireworks off. But now that it's over, just please don't please respect your neighbors and their pets.
Yeah, this state, I don't know how many years it's been, 5 or so, but the changes were that it increased the level or the type of fireworks that could be sold and purchased here. And it looks like sales can go on well outside that 3-day period. So what is the rule on that?
I think before you could have sparklers and non-trajectory things. Now you can have things that launch into the air and explode, and mortars and bottle rockets and all kinds of things. And it's I just drove by a house earlier today, and I saw this stack of
The paper
this
garbage.
mortar thing that was this tall. It's like, I don't know how much somebody decided to spend on a good
Wow.
time, but it seems like a bit excessive for
Wow.
especially in the urban environment. We have a lot
Yeah,
of
the danger.
It's wood houses, it's older structures, it's things that can catch on fire, and I just I'm glad that I didn't hear of any houses catching on fire, because you looked around and you heard the debris after 4th of July is pretty intense in some of these neighborhoods. And then folks go on other people's private property and light off fireworks, and and then leave a giant mess for someone else to clean up. That's not fair either.
So just a little respect there.
Yeah, try to treat your neighbors pretty well, better than that.
One other thing about kind of improvements in neighborhoods, we're jumping back to our earlier part of the conversation, but streets and sidewalks improvements are a big part of what happens in the summer, but there's been some fairly significant funding and projects designed for this summer.
Yeah, I mean, we're always thankful to the voters for passing the Vital Streets legislation back in 2014 now. Every summer we spend a ton of money trying to make our streets and sidewalks better, and so you see it all over Grand Rapids that we are continuing to rehab our streets and our sidewalks in a variety of capacities. Every street is graded, and we're trying to also be as fiscally responsible as we can in making those repairs. So streets that are kind of beyond improvement, some of the bad streets continue to be the worst streets because we're waiting to just redo them in their entirety so that we can save and mitigate the losses on the streets we know that are still able to be maintained and get fixed up. And so you continue to see these projects happen throughout our neighborhood. We also are thankful to our partners in both the National Senate and Congress. There's a bunch of projects that are on that funding requests have been put in for, and so we're hopeful that we'll get some additional funding for some very specific projects as well.
Okay. Back in 2014, when this funding was kind of designated, it was a bit of an issue where so many years of deterioration meant that the fixes were so much more expensive. So the degree that all these improvements are bringing our streets and sidewalks to will be a cost-saving effect down the road. Is that the correct understanding for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things I think one of the quiet things that I don't think people understand about Grand Rapids is that I think we do a really great job of ensuring that we maintain the assets that we have. We have an entire asset management plan for everything that we own that's a capital, whether it's a building or a street or a light pole, and we know how old it is, how long we think it's going to last, what the life expectancy is of it, and we have a plan to be able to maintain it and pay for it in the future so that we don't get to a position where we can't maintain the assets that we have. And so we think about all of our capital projects that same way. Streets and sidewalks included. So, and we continue to upgrade our infrastructure to be streets and sidewalks for multiple modes of transportation. So it works for cars, it works for bikes, it works for scooters, it works for people, it works for buses. And so you're seeing a lot of changes in the types of street improvements that we're making just to accommodate those multiple modes of transportation.
Lots of change in that area with the mobility. So with the driverless cars, automated cars, you also have those two different vendors of scooters. There's e-bikes, right?
Yep.
So what's the adaptation that's going on? Are there special lanes for a lot of these? All of that not supposed to be on sidewalks.
Yeah, we're trying to add additional. We've seen a lot of streets go on a road diet, as you would say. We've eliminated multiple lanes. So rather than have 4 travel lanes, we might have 2 travel lanes, a turn lane, and then allow infrastructure for bicycles. We're trying to designate certain streets to have better bicycle infrastructure rather than try to have striping just on a street for a bicycle or a scooter. It's designating a specific spot on the more main streets to have a place for them to go. And then we're just looking at, like you said, we have the May Mobility, which is the driverless cars, which is there's a whole new fleet of those that have just showed up in Grand Rapids. So it's really cool to have a company like that want to invest in Grand Rapids and figure out how to kind of ride the wave to what we think the future might look like.
So as streets get skinnier, it just makes more sense for some of these other modes of transportation. What are the rules? If you happen to know, if you're a bike, if you're a scooter, you can travel in the same lane. If you have the right to be in the regular traffic lane, how does that work?
Yeah, with the bicycle stuff, especially there's a state law that you have to be at least 3 feet away. We have a local that you need to be 5 feet away and respect the bicycle traveling in the travel lane. We do ask that bicycles, scooters not ride on the sidewalks. That's for pedestrians. I think there's inherent safety concerns with wheeled vehicles being on sidewalks and how they interact with cars and buses and such. I think we've seen like you said, we have 2 scooter vendors and e-assist bicycles now. So those are both new features in Grand Rapids, which in trying to ensure that there's equity in getting those to a variety of neighborhoods around town. And I think Grand Rapids is in a valley, so having those e-assisted bikes, I think we originally talked about having a bicycle sharing program, but for me personally, I think the private supported e-bike makes a whole lot more sense than a bicycle.
Michigan Hill.
Yes. Even the west side here,
Yeah.
right? Trying to ride everywhere you go,
Right.
everywhere you leave downtown from goes up. So.
Right. Well, then see if I can figure out how to ask this question, but is there a conflict when it comes to some of these social zones that bump out into the streets and then trying to have these specialized lanes for some of these alternative transportation methods?
Yeah, I mean, you do see that we've had some challenges with implementing outdoor public spaces, and I mean, we're just around the corner from Bridge Street here, where we took a pretty narrow street, and part of it's encroached upon to provide this outdoor experience. But I think we figured it out. I think people are, when I-196 is closed and you let 2 summers in a row, I think people adapt. People figure out that it's it just takes another second or two to get around, and we just all have to be patient. And there's plenty of side streets to get around on, and I think we've seen people figure out that there's lots of other ways to get someplace. Maybe let's just see a little bit more Grand Rapids that you normally wouldn't see.
That's for sure. And then this brings back to mind a question we had in a previous show, but I wanted to ask you, is when we're talking some of these social zones, it is setting up business on the sidewalks, and just kind of the little bit of the conflict there where there's tables, chairs, business there, and then still trying to make your way down the sidewalk.
Yeah, in planning this, the planning department's been kind of trying to be sensitive of ensuring that there is an adequate travel lane for pedestrians. So it doesn't work in every circumstance. A lot of times we'll take away a parking spot. Is the easiest typical way to do it. I think that's the preferred method for public space in the street, or private space in the public street. Certain sidewalks just aren't wide enough to allow it. So unfortunately, sometimes we have to get creative with how we allow it. But making sure that there's always pedestrian access down the sidewalk is something that we do ensure, no matter where outdoor public space happens like that.
Okay. Well, a deep dive on some of our modes of transportation here in Grand Rapids. We're going to take our final break. We're at about 14 minutes before 5 o'clock on this Monday, and we'll be back with John O'Connor, First Ward Commissioner.
How do you build a strong local food economy? Meet Chris. Chris is opening Osteria Rosa, a locally sourced Italian restaurant in a building brought back to life by 616 Development. But he doesn't know any local farmers to supply him with food year-round. This is Melissa. Melissa runs the Fulton Street Farmers Market and publishes a long list, even in the dead of winter, of available produce, meats, bakery goods, and more on the Rapidian. This is Amy. Amy wants to do more to support the farmers and her local food economy. Amy talks to Melissa, who introduces her to farmers at the Fulton Street Farmers Market, and Amy, in turn, publishes their stories, also on the Rapidian. Chris hears about the Rapidian and now has access to a local grocery list and information that he needs to make connections with local farmers. He feeds his patrons with local food year-round. Connections multiply. Meals are shared. A stronger local food economy is built.
Welcome back to City Connection here on Community Media Center's Channel 24, GRTV's Livewire. With John O'Connor in the studio with me, we're going to talk a little bit more of some of his committee work. And John, you're on the Fiscal Committee here on the City Commission, and I wanted to hear a little bit about some of that work.
Yeah, I've had the privilege of being able to chair our Fiscal Committee the last couple of years, and so we have two major committees. It's Community Development and Fiscal. So basically all the dollars that get spent through the City of Grand Rapids budget have to pass through the Fiscal Committee. So it's where your tax dollars, the rubber meets the road.
So does that mean your committee is a huge part of the budgeting process that's presented from the city manager?
Yep, it is. It's you know, everything kind of gets vetted through that before it goes to the entirety of the commission. And yeah, we're just starting the meeting tomorrow will be our first, the start of the fiscal year. So
Okay.
Grand Rapids is still in a strong fiscal position. I'm really proud of the work that our team does at the city to ensure that we are fiscally sustainable moving forward. That we've done a great job of setting aside funds for a rainy day and have them ready in the event that something happens. And they were important in this time of COVID to have our dollars set aside. We were ready to deal with it. It wouldn't have been fun. We're really fortunate and thankful that the federal government came through and helped us with some of the CARES dollars and some of the recovery dollars to ensure that we can kind of navigate the uncertainties of the future.
So this fiscal year that began this month is called fiscal year 2022, and I know it's been termed a continuation budget for the most part, but any unique pullouts you'd like to kind of share with us?
I think the big one that, again, we talked about housing earlier is just we are committed to funding our affordable housing fund. The mayor asked me to chair the affordable housing task force like 4 years ago now, and one of our takeaways was a lot of communities have an affordable housing fund set aside to invest in kind of different capacities of developing affordable housing. And so we've had a little over $1 million ready to go into that, but we're going to, through some of the federal funds that we're getting and some of the activities we're having with our 201 Market site transition, we're hopeful to be able to put upwards of $20 million aside into the affordable housing fund over the next few years. So that we can continue to invest in positive housing outcomes here in Grand Rapids. So I think that's one of the most exciting things, I think, for me in this budget.
We talked a lot about what's happening in the first ward when it comes to affordable housing or diversity of housing. Can you speak a little bit to some of the other two wards projects?
I don't know necessarily specifics, but I do. I mean, there are housing projects happening all over our community. Again, we have a ton of great housing developers, especially our kind of nonprofit housing developers from Dwelling Place and ICCF. They've really mastered the art of navigating that very complex state system to be able to get, when twice a year they announce tax credit projects that happen, in various communities around the state, and I'm always in awe of how well Grand Rapids does in terms of being able to get awards compared to other communities. So.
Yeah. What else from the fiscal committee? What about this budget? Some of the other newer things.
So other things that I think are important, I mentioned the 201 Market site. I think one of the things that we're working on right now is how we can transition away from having that site on Market be the home to most of our city operations. You may have seen that we announced the purchase of the Kent County Road Commission site up on Scribner, which is a site that's already being used for kind of public good, and so be able to transition our operations away from a downtown, very important part of our river, as we talk about the river revitalization and trying to reactivate the river and get some positive development down there. That we've just made a big investment partnering with the CAA and some private enterprise to be able to translocate some sewer activity that existed under that site, which was always an impediment to future development. So we're moving the sewer off Market onto an adjacent street, which will then allow that river access site to be developed, and providing public access to the river is an important part of that conversation. It's making sure that we're going to see private development happen on those sites, but maintaining the river's edge to be public space so that the public can always enjoy the wonders of the Grand River.
What kind of remediation will be required since that site's been used for such a different purpose for a long time?
I'm not sure the scope of it. I'm sure that there's certainly some diligence being done to determine what lives along that river. Who could imagine after over 100 years of activity along that? We've certainly had some public infrastructure, but then there was always, I think, industrial and commercial activity along that portion of the river. So it'll be a significant lift, but I think in the long term, it's going to be pretty amazing to see the river reactivated and probably get some beautiful green space back along that corridor.
that Restore the Rapids and that whole river area project is huge. It's really, really huge, and maybe some people haven't really been seeing a lot of progress on it, and I know we just went through, maybe are still a little bit in a pandemic situation, but what is the latest that you're aware of?
No, so we are still going through it. You know, we have applications into the federal government. There's so many layers that have to be navigated, but we still have commitments, you know, from partners to be able to make sure that, you know, we get to the point that it can be done. You know, our friends at the Public Museum just announced, you know, their big project to fundraise to expand the museum, and part of that is they're a river partner. They have a location along the river that, you know, they're going to working with the future plans to make sure that what they want to do works well with the river. So it's really great to see people coming on board to know this isn't just a Grand Rapids effort. This is a regional effort, and you know, the folks who have access along the river are also being mindful of what they're going to do to make sure it works within those plans as well.
So I'm not totally aware of what the Public Museum does have planned. What kind of changes or what kind of new things are there?
They're going to be, their whole hope is to do the first major, and there's never been any expansion of it since it was built in the 90s, so their plans are to add to reimagine how it works, and obviously the way in which museums function today are much different than they have in the past, so they have a pretty aggressive plan to be able to bring it to with some more modern ways in which you can interact with the museum space. Obviously we have the school that functions now in partnership with the museum, so that, you know, just make sure that it works well for educational purposes, and then also provides better access to the river, so that the students can also get in the river and use that site as a point at which education can kind of enter the river and interact with the river.
Okay. Well, any other comments you want to make about being your chairing of the fiscal committee and things that we should be aware of or look for?
No, I think we'll, you know, the Grand Rapids is an income tax funded city for the most part, and so with folks working from home for the last year, there's still a lot of uncertainty about what our income tax receipts are going to be. So we're hopeful with people returning to work in person and you know, the economy I think starting to recover quite nicely. We're hopeful that that our income tax receipts will outpace our projections, which will give us some flexibility to continue to make investments in things like housing.
So 2020 income taxes, there was even a delay on when those were due, so you're getting the picture of what the hit was a little bit late.
Yeah, we're not quite. I mean, we're not quite sure what it looks like yet. So hopefully soon we'll have a better picture, and you know, hopefully that you know, there's been some hope that the state's also going to help, you know, fund us.
Well, we've got about a minute and a half, and I want to give you an opportunity to just talk a little bit more about your ward as we head out, things to look for in the coming days here on the first ward of Grand Rapids, and then we'll close out for the day.
No, I'm just appreciative of the opportunity to serve the residents of the first ward. You know, again, it's a large and diverse ward from here on the west side all the way down South Division and Granville Avenue, and so it's really great that we've seen a ton of investment in all of those neighborhoods. We've seen investment in our parks and in our business districts, and I'm just really glad that people are enjoying and want to call the first ward home.
Well, John O'Connor, First Ward Commissioner, in your second term in this position, so your second and final term as Commissioner here in Grand Rapids. Thank you for telling us a little bit about First Ward, all the things that are happening, including citywide things such as the fiscal committee work, the public safety work. Really appreciate you spending the hour with us here today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, thanks for the visit. I want to say thanks to John O'Connor, and I am Linda Galash, closing out this month's edition of City Connection. We'll be back planning on the first Monday of August with another live edition of City Connection here on Community Media Center's channel 24 live, and then on 25 later this month.